Today's dedication is for Terax, who gave me a very generous 1 year's worth of subscriptions on Patreon. One of the most potent commanders in the new Avatar set is Lord Azula. This is a Grixis commander with Firebending 2, so when it attacks you make 2 red mana. And whenever you cast any spell, whilst this is attacking, you copy the spell and can choose new targets. So like I said, that is for any type of spell that you cast, not just instants and sorceries, and it doesn't only trigger once per turn, so you can cast any number of spells during combat, and they can be any type of spells, and you will get copies of each of them. So while this does of course lend itself to spell-slinger, you can also make use of the other card types that have flash, particularly with permanents like Il Umbra will give your commander totem armor so that it's more difficult to remove. Orcish Bowmasters, we all know how good this is. Throw damage around all over the place and go tall with the Orc, and if you've got 2 of these in play then it's even more damage galore. Snapcaster Mage will flash back 2 instants or sorceries and give you 2 bodies as well. Aboleth Spawn steals even more of the ETBs from your opponents. Hydroelectric Specimen you're probably not going to cast during combat anyway, but if you do, you can redirect a spell twice, a Swords to Plowshares or whatever. Might come in handy if they've got a counter spell for the first one, then the copy will come in and still redirect the spell. But having said that, they're probably just not counter in that instance. Mind Splicer Apparatus. This is still a bit of a Spellslinger deck. We've obviously got some flash stuff in here, but there's still plenty of typical Spellslinger strategies in the instants and copying instants and stuff, so Mind Splicer Apparatus. Once this enters with a copy and both of them trigger, our instants and sorceries immediately cost 2 less. Sphinx of the Forgotten Lore get 2 3/3 bodies into play. Both of them have flying, so it'll be easy to attack and trigger them to allow us some more flashback from the graveyard. Torrential Gearhulk is a big Snapcaster Mage, except you of course get 2 of them. And both the instants and or sorceries that you target will be able to be cast for free. Don't forget that you can choose different targets for each one that enters. And then Hullbreaker Horror combos off with Soul Ring, and it is flash, so having 2 of them in play is just going to make you go off even faster. This is going to be a problem for your opponents. Even if you can't go off on a combo, you just cast spells into it and bounce things left, right and centre. For card draw, it's anything we can copy really. The vast majority of the deck is instants and spells with flash, so that we don't have to play around trying to make sorceries and the like more relevant by getting down Ley Line of Anticipation and stuff like that. We don't want to be giving things flash because it's just one more hoop to jump through. We just want to be able to play things at instant speed and not slow down at all waiting for a piece to make our other cards relevant. So Brainstorm would be draw 6 and put 4 back on top of the library. You could even shuffle between the draws if you wanted to, if you had a fetch or something like that. Born Upon a Wind is one of our only means of making sorcery speed spells flash speed. Thought this was worth including because worst case scenario it's pay 2 and draw 2, but if we do just so happen to want to cast a board wipe or something at flash speed, then we can do that. Fairy Mastermind is going to draw you a lot of cards at the best of times. If you have 2 of them in, then every time an opponent plays their second spell of the turn, you will draw 2 cards instead. Pull from Tomorrow, a big mana sink. That will be draw, 5 cards twice, and you'll still have to discard 2 cards to this, don't forget. Sazakep's Brew. There is a little bit of combat shenanigans in the deck, and this is your typical red rummage spell where you will discard 1 and draw 2. But if a gift is promised and you're handing over a fish token to your opponent, then you'll get +2 to power on your commander. Slick Sequence will be 2 damage to any target twice, and it's likely that you will have cast another spell this turn, so you'll likely draw 2 when this is copied as well. It is noteworthy that when the copies go on the stack, they don't count as cast, so this doesn't automatically enable itself, although the copy will. So put this on the stack, the copy goes on top of it, you have cast this before the copy of course, so the copy will draw you a card, but this won't unless you've cast something before it, which you likely will have done anyway. Brain Surge, at the very least, we can get multiple copies of spells in this deck, which we'll go over next. So at the very least with our commander, this is draw 8 and put the top 4 on top of the library. It's a souped up Brainstorm that we saw previously. Again, you could shuffle between the effects if you wanted to see new cards. Frantic Search is pretty much free, so it's really good to play before anything else so that you can get some more card filtering going, but it also frees up the mana, because like I said, it's pretty much free. In fact, you actually net mana if this gets a discount, say your instants and sorceries cost 1 or 2 less. Valakut Awakening, a one-sided wheel, but it's also a land as well, so can always use it for that if needs be. Archmage Emeritus is going to see all these instants and sorceries not only being cast, but being copied as well, so going to be a really good card draw engine. And then effects like Big Score and Unexpected Windfall are going to be incredible as well, because they pay for themselves with your commander. So play the Big Score, discard a card, you will draw 4 cards because you've already paid the cost. Discarding the card is part of the cost as opposed to the resolution, so it's discard 1 card and draw 4, and you will also make 4 treasure tokens because that is part of the resolution. So again, this is pretty much free. You get even more copies, you actually go mana positive. Enduring Curiosity could have gone in the flash section, but decided to put it here in the draw. We do want to be encouraging our opponents to take the damage from our commander so that we are not going to lose it in combat to blocks. And when we do land it, we're going to draw 2 cards. When we land with any creature onto any player, we'll draw 2 cards in this instance because we're going to have 2 Curiosities. Noteworthy that the token, when it dies, will not come back in as an enchantment because when tokens die, they evaporate immediately. Notion Thief, one of the 3 game changers. I think I did this as bracket 3, as I tend to. If an opponent would draw a bunch of cards, then you draw them instead. Again, this is flash, so you don't necessarily have to wait for your opponents to cast a wheel or something like that. You could just play it during combat and then keep your opponents from wanting to draw additional cards at all. If you do it during combat, of course, you get 2 of these. And finally, in this section, Dig Through Time. If we have a lot of chaff in the graveyard, then this is likely only going to cost us a couple of mana. And we would be looking at the top 14 cards of the library and putting 4 of them into hand. So I think I just mentioned the copy effects. We have both Narset's Reversal and Reverberate. There might be room for more effects like this. I need to play the deck and see how it pans out. Oh, also there's Expansion and Explosion there. Expansion copies an instant or sorcery with CMC 4 or less, but Explosion allows you to dump a load of mana into X. It deals X damage and you draw X cards. Both of them are instants, so we can copy both of those. But yeah, the shenanigans that we can pull with Reverberate and Narset's Reversal, especially Narset's Reversal, we could bounce the original spell back to hand and still get multiple copies of whatever it is that we're copying, ready to recast the original spell again. Veyron will just sit there. We might be able to get some evasion on this as well and swing through for some damage, but it's more likely just going to sit there and copy the instants and sorceries that we cast. So we'd get a copy from our commander and then a copy from this as well. Best case scenario, we've also got the Twinning Staff, so that would be another additional copy. And obviously the more things we copy, the more cards we draw, the more mana we're making, the more damage we're dealing, etc, etc. For instance, with things like Monstrous Rage, this is effectively +3, +1 and Trample. We only ever get 1 roll token on a creature, but we could give the roll token to Lord Azula and then another one to Veyron, for instance. The monster token being +1, +1 and Trample. Constantly doubling up all of your spells is good with something like Bulk Up. This literally doubles the power of the target creature, so with Lord Azula, you would go from 4 to 8 power, from 8 to 16, 16 to 32. So if you either get buffs on her first, or you just manage to make copies of this multiple times, then you could easily one-shot a player at instant speed after blocks are declared, i.e. she hasn't been blocked. That would be a nice combat trick to alpha strike an opponent out of the game. Similar with Fists of Flame, this only adds +1 to power, but it's per card you've drawn this turn, so if you've drawn 1,000,000 cards, then you could push through the extra damage. It's not likely that you're going to make it the, what would it be, the 17 points of damage just from this alone that you would need to alpha strike someone, but if you've hit someone multiple times throughout the course of the game, Fists of Flame could push through the extra damage for you, and it is a cantrip, so for every copy that resolves, you will be drawing a card as well. And I just shoved this in the combat category, Elementsters Simulacrum. For each opponent in this deck, you create 2 token copies of up to 1 target creature that player controls. So look at all 3 of your opponents, steal their best creature twice is most likely the scenario here. As for interaction, Lightning Bolt goes well with the Narset's Reversal stuff, like I said before. If you've got something that you can target and make multiple copies of over and over again, then something like Lightning Bolt can deal a whole bunch of damage. Snap, similar to the Frantic Search, in most Spell-slinger decks you should be including any effects that can untap lands. So Snap is free, you get 2 copies of it, so you actually always net mana with these effects because it's pay 2 mana, untap 4 lands and bounce 2 creatures. Untimely Malfunction and Deflecting Swat are not necessarily again going to be used during combat, but you can redirect an instant away from you like you can with the Hydro Electrostatic 2-sided land, that thing that we looked at before, whatever it was called. Amphibian Downpour, one of the few enchantments. I have more flash enchantments in here because there's quite a few Frogify effects on enchantments, but Grixis just lends itself well to Spellslingers with specifically instants and sorceries, so had to lean into that more than anything else. Didn't really have room for the auras, but Amphibian Downpour has Storm, so it's good on its own anyway. Again, you don't cast the copies that you're putting on the stack, so that won't count towards the Storm, but it's likely that you've spent some more mana before now anyway. So not only will it copy itself to the Storm, but it will copy itself with your other copy effects as well. Chaos Warp, a lot more chaotic when there are copies of it. You're a lot more likely to avoid your opponent's lands the more of this you cast. It may well be that you make 3 copies of this and end up slamming yourself into an Eldrazi or something, but chances are that what you got rid of was worse with Chaos Warp. Prismari Command, don't forget you can choose new targets for the copies, so a couple of Prismari commands is 2 of these 4, so 2 damage to any targets, loot 2, destroy an artifact or create a treasure. I don't think... No, if you make a copy you can't choose new modes, so that's worth noting, but like I said, you can choose new targets for the copy. Sink into Stupor, just a little bit of protection, pretty much goes in any blue deck now. Withering Torment for creatures or enchantments. Deadly Rollick is good because if you want to get the copy you have to have your commander in play anyway, so this is exile 2 creatures for 0 mana. And Furl the Profane again goes in pretty much any black deck. Destroy a creature or planeswalker. You could kill a couple of creatures, a couple of planeswalkers, or 1 of each for only 4 mana. With this being Spellslinger, we've concentrated a lot on the rituals that are available to us in Grixis, so while we've got the rocks and particularly a Thought Vessel, because I expect us to have a lot of cards in hand, we do concentrate more on instants and sorceries that we can copy during combat, because I do expect that we're going to be able to chain off, so plenty of black and red mana in the rituals that we can make. But we also have, speaking of Spellslinger, a Magecraft creature here that makes a treasure every time it sees an instant or sorcery, either cast or copied. The fact that these trigger on copies is absolutely relevant with us, of course. So if you were to cast something like Cabal Ritual with your commander and the Stormkiln Artist in play, you would make 2 treasure immediately, and that would pay for the Cabal Ritual, as well as net you the mana that this ritual would make already. So you've got an idea of the vast amounts of mana you can make, and obviously the artist will fix your colours as well. You can't make red with these rituals. We've got Nightscape Familiar over here as well to discount our blue and red spells, of which we have plenty in the deck, so that will make the rituals even better. Pyretic Ritual will cost 1 and net 3. Just go over the wraths quickly. Toxic Deluge, nothing really too special. If we have had our commander removed and our opponents are starting to go off, this will just slow them down and allow us to get our commander back out. And Chandra's Ignition, buffing our commander's power up, as we showed that we could in a previous section, means that Chandra's Ignition is going to do a hell of a lot of damage to not only all the other creatures, but to the opponents as well. So if we did just Alpha Strike someone, we could deal with the other opponents by casting Chandra's Ignition. That is only a sorcery, but if we're going to smack everyone for 20-30 damage from our commander, then I think we only need 1 copy of this anyway. In order to get the damage through, we're going to need some forms of evasion and haste. We do want to be swinging in as soon as possible with this commander, so Brotherhood Regalia gives ward and unblockable for very cheap. Greaves and Swiftfoot Boots go in most decks, but particularly interesting in here because we do need the haste. Frostcliff Siege also gives us haste, but it gives us trample as well as a buff to our power. So if an opponent can only chump with a token or a mana dork or something, we're still getting damage through. But the haste is really why it's in here. The trample is just some upside for us. Winged Boots is evasion in the form of flying, but it also gives us Ward 4 as well. Again, just as cheap as the Brotherhood Regalia, 2 to play and 1 only to equip. And then just a few cards of note here. You've seen how many instants and sorceries we want to cast. For every one of them that we do cast, excluding the copies unfortunately, Gutter Snipe will deal 2 damage to each opponent. So this will still mount up. We can easily cast 5 instants or sorceries into this, and that's 10 damage on every opponent. Sedgemoor Witch is completing the Magecraft cycle in this deck, 1 for each colour. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery, you get a pest token. So this is one of the effects that does care about seeing copies, so we'll be seeing a lot of pests galore, and we can block with the pest tokens, so that's going to be some nice chump blocking for us. Waterlogged Teachings is an instant and a tap land on the other side, so versatile there. Search your library for an instant card or a card with flash, and that is an instant itself, so do it during combat, and you've paid 4 mana to tutor a couple of most likely relevant cards straight into hand. Most of the deck is instants and flash. Invoke Calamity, a bit more graveyard recursion. You can cast up to 2 instant and or sorcery spells with total mana value 6 or less from the graveyard and or the hand without paying the mana costs. So this is more of a late game spell once your graveyard's full, but there's nothing to stop you casting a buff for your commander and then playing this afterwards and getting a bunch more copies of it, and that's how you would get through something like that Alpha Strike we were referring to previously. And then Nexus of Fate, I think, is the only means, or one of the only means, of taking an extra turn at instant speed. We can't recur this from the graveyard, unfortunately, because it does get shuffled back into the library, but because of that, there's nothing to stop us grabbing it back with the Waterlogged Teachings. If you have a massive amount of mana from your rituals, you could even cast this, put the copy on the stack, cast Nexus of Fate, fetch Nexus of Fate back into hand with the Waterlogged Teachings, and then go and grab something else with the original copy, and then you'll still have Nexus of Fate available to you for your next turn. Plus the fact that you get 2 extra turns with Nexus of Fate and your commander in the attack zone. So worst case scenario, you just cast this while your commander's attacking, 2 extra combats. I think that's good enough without all the Grixis degeneracy. Anyway, that's that for this deck. I hope you're all looking forward to it. I should be able to start making recordings of these Avatar commanders within the next week. So by the time you're seeing this, hopefully next week we'll be looking at some actual gameplay footage again. And for the sake of the future of the channel, let's pray that people like the Avatar set a lot more than they liked the Spider-Man set. If you liked it, then be sure to leave a like and consider donating on Patreon like a few of you do already. Big thank you to those of you who do. I'm TribalKai. Thank you for watching.